The desperate gambit. Admiral Kexis stood before the massive viewscreen of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, watching his empire die one star system at a time. The red dots on the tactical display told a story of complete failure. 18 months ago, the Zephyrian Empire had controlled 47 worlds across 3 spiral arms. Now, only 7 remained, and those were falling fast. The bridge around him buzzed with the quiet desperation of a crew that knew their time was running out. Zephyrian officers, with their tall, angular frames and silver-scaled skin, moved between workstations with mechanical precision. Their large black eyes reflected the dying light of their civilization. The war against the Hegemony Coalition had been a disaster from the start, but Kexis had been too proud to see it. Admiral, Communications Officer Thex approached with careful steps. Her voice carried the flat tone that Zephyrians used when delivering bad news. We've lost contact with the Vega outpost. Enemy forces have likely overrun the system. Kexis nodded without turning around. Another world, another billion Zephyrian lives lost. The Coalition had formed specifically to stop the Zephyrian expansion, uniting 12 different species against what they called the Silver Plague. For 3 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire had grown by conquering weaker civilizations, taking their resources, and enslaving their populations. Now those same species were working together to end Zephyrian rule forever. "Sir," Science Officer Vex called from his station, "I may have found something interesting in our long-range surveillance data." Kexis finally turned away from the tactical display. Vex was young for a Zephyrian officer, barely 200 years old, but he had proven useful in finding new worlds to conquer. "What is it?" Vex activated a holographic display showing a small yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. This system, designation Sol 3, lies outside the main galactic trade routes. We discovered it during our expansion surveys 5 years ago, but deemed it too dangerous to approach. Dangerous how? Kexis moved closer to examine the display. The third planet is what xenobiologists call a death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather patterns, massive temperature variations, and aggressive wildlife. Our initial scans detected a species that had somehow not only survived these conditions, but actually thrived. Vex highlighted the blue-green planet. They call themselves humans. Kexis studied the planet with growing interest. Death worlds were rare, and the species that evolved on them were notoriously difficult to control. Most civilizations avoided them entirely. Are they space-capable? Yes, sir. They achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 50 of their years ago. Our monitoring stations have intercepted their communications for decades. They've made contact with several peaceful species and have developed a reputation for... Vex paused, searching for the right words. For what? Officer. For responding to distress calls, sir. They seem to have an unusual compulsion to help other species in trouble, even at great cost to themselves. Their cultural databases are filled with stories about protecting the weak and standing against oppression. A slow smile spread across Admiral Kexis's face. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of hope. The Zephyrian Empire might be dying, but perhaps it didn't have to end in defeat. Perhaps there was still a way to turn this war around. Tell me more about these humans. Vex brought up additional data streams. They're a relatively young species, technologically speaking. Their ships are small compared to ours, and their weapons appear primitive. However, they've shown remarkable adaptability and problem-solving abilities. Our xenopsychologists believe their harsh homeworld environment forced them to develop advanced cooperation and innovation skills. Perfect, Kexis murmured. And they respond to distress calls. Without fail, sir. In the past decade, they've diverted resources to help 7 different species with various crises. They never ask for payment and often refuse offers of compensation. Kexis began pacing, his mind racing with possibilities. The humans sounded naive, idealistic, and predictable. Their small ships and primitive weapons meant they posed no real threat to Zephyrian technology. But their reputation for helping others could be exploited. Officer Fex, he called to his communications specialist. I want you to craft a distress signal. Make it appear to come from a peaceful species under attack by aggressive forces. Fex's black eyes widened. Sir, are you suggesting we impersonate distress victims? I'm suggesting we use every tool at our disposal to save our civilization. Kexis returned to the view screen, where the red dots of enemy forces continued their relentless advance. These humans have technology we need, ships we can capture, and genetic material that could prove valuable for our bioweapons programs. Science Officer Vex looked uncomfortable. Admiral, the surveillance data suggests humans might be more dangerous than they appear. Their death world origin means they've likely evolved traits that made them strong survivors. Kexis interrupted. Excellent. Once we've captured a few hundred specimens, we can study those traits and incorporate them into our own genetic enhancement programs. Imagine Zephyrian soldiers with death world adaptations. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Finally, Communications Officer Fex spoke up. What story should our distress signal tell, Admiral? Kexis thought for a moment. Create a fictional species. Call them the Nalari. Make them sound peaceful, perhaps researchers or explorers. Say they're being hunted by an aggressive military force that's determined to wipe them out. Include just enough technical details to make it believable. And if the humans investigate further, they won't have time. Once they respond to our signal, we'll spring the trap immediately. A few small human ships won't be able to resist our firepower. Kexis began outlining his plan to his officers. We'll position our fleet in the Kepler Nebula. The electromagnetic interference will mask our signatures until it's too late for the humans to escape. Over the next several hours, the Zephyrian crew worked to create the perfect deception. They fabricated records of the fictional Nalari species, complete with cultural details and technological specifications. They created false sensor readings showing a massive fleet pursuing helpless refugee ships. Every detail was designed to trigger the human instinct to protect the weak. The signal is ready, Admiral, Fex reported. According to our projections, it will reach the human home system in approximately 72 hours. Excellent. Set course for the Kepler Nebula. We'll wait there for our prey to come to us. As the Dominion's Edge and its escort fleet jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Kexis felt confident for the first time since the war began. The humans might have a reputation as dangerous Deathworlders, but they were still just one primitive species. Their naive desire to help others would be their downfall. What Kexis didn't understand was that humans had learned a very different lesson from their harsh homeworld. Earth had taught them that the greatest threats often came disguised as something harmless. Predators learned to mimic prey, parasites learned to appear beneficial, and the most dangerous enemies were often those who appeared to need help. Humanity had survived their death world not just by being strong, but by being smart. They had learned to recognize deception, to verify before trusting, and to always be prepared for betrayal. Most importantly, they had learned that when someone preys on the helpless, the only acceptable response is overwhelming force. The Zephyrians had made a critical mistake in their research. They had observed human responses to genuine distress calls, but they had never seen what humans did to those who exploited their compassion. They were about to discover that there was a vast difference between being helpful and being naive. In 72 hours, the trap would be set. The hunters would be waiting for their prey. But unknown to Admiral Kexis, he had just signed his empire's death warrant. Because when humanity answered that distress call, they wouldn't be coming as naive helpers. They would be coming as apex predators who had just discovered something trying to hunt them. When predators meet apex predators, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the communications center of the Earth Defense Force vessel Resilience, reading the distress signal for the third time. Something about it bothered her, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what. The message was perfectly crafted, complete with all the details that would normally trigger an immediate humanitarian response. Analysis complete. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez, the ship's intelligence officer. The signal appears to originate from the Kepler Nebula region. The Nalari claim to be peaceful researchers fleeing an aggressive military force. Chen nodded slowly. The Resilience was Earth's newest exploration vessel, designed specifically for long-range missions and first-contact scenarios. Its crew of 250 represented the best of humanity's spacefaring personnel. They had responded to genuine distress calls before, but something about this one felt different. "Have we ever encountered the Nalari species before?" Chen asked. "Negative, Captain. They're not in any of our contact databases. The signal includes basic cultural and technological information, but nothing we can verify independently." Dr. James Park, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from his workstation. "Captain, I've been analyzing the biological data included in the signal. The Nalari physiology seems unusually well adapted for their claimed homeworld conditions. It's possible, but statistically unlikely." "What do you mean?" "They claim to come from a low-gravity world with minimal temperature variation, but their described bone density and cardiovascular system suggest adaptation to much harsher conditions. It's as if someone created a fictional species but used biological templates from a different type of world." Chen felt the familiar tingle of intuition that had kept her alive through 15 years of dangerous missions. Earth had taught humanity to trust that feeling. "Computer, run a deep analysis on the signal's technical specifications. Look for inconsistencies or anomalies." The ship's AI responded immediately. "Analysis complete. 17 minor inconsistencies detected in technical data. Probability of fabrication, 67%. The bridge crew exchanged glances. A fabricated distress signal meant one of two things. Either the senders were so desperate they were lying about their situation, or it was a trap. "Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez," Chen ordered, "I want a full tactical analysis of the Kepler Nebula region. Assume hostile intent." Rodriguez's fingers flew over his console. "Captain, the nebula would be an ideal location for an ambush. Electromagnetic interference would mask ship signatures until visual range. If someone wanted to lure ships into a trap, this would be the perfect spot. And yet we're going anyway," Chen said quietly. "Ma'am." Chen smiled grimly. "Because if it's real, people are dying. And if it's a trap, someone thinks they can use human compassion against us. Either way, we need to respond." "What are your orders, Captain?" "We go, but not alone, and not unprepared." Chen activated the ship's general communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call that may be fabricated. We will respond, but under the assumption that we're walking into a hostile situation." Battle stations. The Resilience had been designed by humans who understood that the galaxy contained both genuine refugees and clever predators. While it appeared to be a simple exploration vessel, it carried some of Earth's most advanced defensive and offensive systems. More importantly, it carried a crew that had been trained for exactly this type of situation. As the ship approached the Kepler Nebula, Chen reviewed what Earth Command knew about species that used false distress signals. The practice was rare but not unknown. Usually, it involved pirates or slavers looking for easy targets, but the sophistication of this particular signal suggested something more dangerous. "Captain," Communications Officer Lisa Wong called out, "we're receiving another transmission from the Nalari. They're providing specific coordinates and asking us to hurry. Time to destination, 47 minutes at current speed." Chen made her decision. "Reduce speed to 1/4 impulse. Deploy sensor drones ahead of us. I want to know what's waiting in that nebula before we arrive." The drones launched silently, their advanced stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible. As they approached the specified coordinates, their sensors began picking up energy signatures hidden within the nebula's electromagnetic interference. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with alarm, "the drones are detecting multiple large vessels concealed within the nebula. Energy signatures suggest military-grade weapons and shielding." "How many?" At least 12 ships, possibly more. And Captain, the energy signatures don't match any peaceful species in our databases. Chen nodded. The trap was confirmed. Are they aware of our drones? Negative. Our stealth technology appears to be superior to their detection systems. Good. Continue monitoring. I want to know everything about their fleet before we make contact. Dr. Park looked up from his console. Captain, I've been cross-referencing the energy signatures with our xenological databases. I believe the ships belong to the Zephyrian Empire. The bridge went silent. Every member of the crew knew about the Zephyrians. They were one of the galaxy's most aggressive expansion-minded species, currently fighting a defensive war against a coalition of their former victims. The Zephyrians, Chen said slowly. So this isn't about piracy or slavery. This is about a dying empire looking for new resources. It appears so, Captain. They likely see us as primitive enough to exploit, but advanced enough to be useful. Chen smiled coldly. Then they've made a serious miscalculation. Admiral Kexis stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, watching his sensors track the approaching human vessel. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The humans had fallen for the deception completely, approaching at reduced speed, as if being cautious would somehow protect them. Admiral, Tactical Officer Zeph reported, the human ship is smaller than expected, only 300 meters long. Our estimates suggest a crew of fewer than 300. Perfect. A small crew will be easier to manage once we've captured them. Kexis studied the human vessel on his view screen. It looked unremarkable, almost primitive compared to Zephyrian design. Are our capture systems ready? Yes, sir. We can disable their engines with a precise ion burst, then use tractor beams to bring them aboard. Excellent. Once we have them, we'll study their technology and select the most useful specimens for genetic analysis. The rest can be used as leverage against their government. What Admiral Kexis didn't know was that the small human ship had already detected his entire fleet. While Zephyrian sensors were advanced by most galactic standards, they had been designed to detect conventional ships with conventional technology. Human engineers, shaped by their Deathworld's demand for efficiency and redundancy, had developed sensor systems that operated on completely different principles. Captain, Rodriguez reported quietly, I've completed the analysis of the Zephyrian fleet. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and what appears to be a command vessel. Total crew estimate, 40,000 personnel. And they think one ship with 250 crew is going to be easy prey. Chen mused. Have they learned anything about human military doctrine? Apparently not, Captain. Dr. Park looked confused. Captain, I don't understand. Even with our advanced technology, we're still massively outnumbered. How can we possibly? Doctor, Chen interrupted gently. There's something about humans that other species consistently fail to understand. We didn't become the apex predators of our world by being the biggest or the strongest. We did it by being the smartest and the most cooperative. She activated the ship's internal communication system. All departments, this is the captain. Execute Plan Omega. Throughout the ship, systems that had appeared to be standard exploration equipment began revealing their true nature. Sensor arrays reconfigured themselves into targeting systems. Scientific laboratories converted into weapons manufacturing centers. The ship's seemingly innocuous shuttle bay opened to reveal a squadron of advanced fighter craft. But most importantly, the Resilience sent out a signal on a frequency that Admiral Kexis had never heard of and couldn't detect. Within minutes, that signal was received by Earth Command, the Andorian Collective, the Vulcan Science Directorate, and 17 other species that had formed defensive pacts with humanity. Admiral, Officer Thex called out on the Zephyrian flagship, the human vessel is transmitting on an unknown frequency. Jam it. Kexis ordered. I cannot, sir. The frequency appears to be quantum encrypted. Our jamming systems have no effect. Kexis frowned but dismissed the concern. Whatever message the humans were sending, it wouldn't matter. By the time any help could arrive, the human ship would be captured, and its crew would be in Zephyrian custody. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The Zephyrian fleet emerged from the nebula with weapons charging, a sight that would have terrified most species. 16 massive warships appearing from nowhere, their silver hulls gleaming with threat displays and weapon arrays. Captain Chen watched them approach with calm interest. "Impressive," she admitted. "They certainly know how to make an entrance." The lead Zephyrian ship opened a communication channel. Admiral Kexis appeared on the screen, his black eyes cold with predatory satisfaction. "Human vessel, you have responded to our distress call. Unfortunately, there are no Nullari refugees. You have walked into a trap. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick." Chen looked at him for a long moment before responding. "Admiral Kexis, I presume. We know who you are. We know about your war with the Coalition. We know about the worlds you've conquered and the species you've enslaved. And we know about your plan to study human genetics for your bioweapons program." Kexis's confidence wavered slightly. "How could you possibly know all that?" "Because humans learned long ago to verify everything, Admiral. When someone sends us a distress call, we don't just respond blindly. We investigate, we analyze, we prepare." Chen's voice hardened. "And when we discover that someone is trying to exploit our desire to help others, we get very, very angry." "Your anger is irrelevant," Kexis snarled. "You are outnumbered 40-1. Your ship is a toy compared to our fleet." "You know what your mistake was, Admiral?" Chen asked conversationally. "You assumed that humans respond to threats the same way other species do. You thought we'd either run away or surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. And you won't." Chen smiled, and something in that expression made Admiral Kexis take an involuntary step backward. "Admiral, humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned that when something threatens us or those we protect, you don't run away. You don't surrender. You fight back with everything you have. You have one ship, do we?" At that moment, space around the Zephyrian fleet began to shimmer. One by one, ships began appearing. First came the other Earth Defense Force vessels that had been positioned just outside sensor range. Then came the Andorian war fleet. Then the Vulcan science ships, their peaceful appearance masking devastating defensive capabilities. Then came ships from a dozen other species, all allies that humanity had made through genuine acts of compassion and protection. Within minutes, the Zephyrian fleet found itself surrounded by over 50 vessels, representing the largest coalition fleet ever assembled. Admiral Kexis stared at the tactical display in horror. "You see, Admiral," Captain Chen continued, "when you help people without expecting anything in return, you make friends. Real friends. The kind who come running when you call for help. The kind who remember that you were there for them when they needed you most." "This is impossible," Kexis whispered. "No, Admiral. This is what happens when predators try to hunt apex predators. When you sent that false distress signal, you didn't just target humanity. You threatened every species we've sworn to protect, every civilization we've helped, every friend we've made." The Coalition fleet moved into attack formation, weapons powering up with the combined might of 13 different species' military technologies. "Admiral Kexis," Captain Chen said formally, "by the authority of the Galactic Protection Pact, you are under arrest for war crimes, slavery, genocide, and the attempted exploitation of humanitarian assistance. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Kexis looked around his bridge at his officers, seeing his own despair reflected in their black eyes. The Zephyrian Empire had fallen into a trap of its own making. By trying to exploit human compassion, they had instead triggered the wrath of humanity's allies. We surrender," Kexis said quietly. "Wise choice," Chen replied. "But Admiral, your war against the Coalition species is over. The Zephyrian Empire will be dissolved, its victims will be freed, and its leaders will face justice. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." As Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and prepared to be boarded, Admiral Kexis finally understood the truth about humans. They weren't naive idealists who could be easily exploited. They were apex predators who had learned that the strongest force in the universe wasn't fear or domination. It was cooperation. It was friendship. It was the unbreakable bond between those who stood together against the darkness. The Zephyrians had tried to hunt the hunters. They had learned, too late, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their evolution on a death world. It was their ability to turn strangers into family and enemies into friends. And when someone threatened that family, they would discover why death worlds produced not just survivors, but protectors who would cross the galaxy to defend those they cared about. The distress signal trap had failed completely. But in its failure, it had accomplished something the Zephyrians never intended. It had shown the galaxy that humanity and its allies were ready to defend the innocent, no matter the cost. The age of predator empires was ending. The age of protection and cooperation had begun.